Let's get started. Good evening and welcome to tonight's live virtual program presented by the Howell Carnegie District Library and the League of Women Voters of Livingston County. I'm Brandy Tambasco, Adult Services Librarian here at the library. Thank you for joining us this evening. I have a few housekeeping items to cover before we get started. Tonight's program is scheduled to run until 8 p.m. It will begin with a presentation by our speaker, followed by time for audience questions. To reduce distraction during our speaker's presentation, all attendees will be muted. You may share any questions for the presenter in the chat to Howell Library Adult Services during that time, and then they will be addressed after the presentation during the Q&A session. During that time, you'll be able to unmute yourself to ask a question, and we'll address as many audience questions as we can before the program ends. Throughout the program, if you have any technical issues, please put them into the chat and I'll try and assist as best I can. Subtitles have been enabled for this program. If you want to turn those off, click the small up arrow next to the live transcript button in the bottom menu bar of Zoom and then select Hide Subtitles. This program is being recorded and the recording will be available on the library's YouTube channel and the League of Women Voters of Livingston County's YouTube channel soon after the live program. If you do not want your video in the recording, please make sure your video stays off, that there is a red slash through the camera icon in the bottom left corner of your Zoom window. Without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm turning things over to Ellen Lafferty, the chairperson of the League of Women Voters of Livingston County.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. For those of you who are new to our public forums, the League of Women Voters of Livingston County is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates or political parties at any level of government. We are always working on vital issues of concern to voters here in our county. Yesterday, February 14th, marked 102 years that the League has empowered voters and defended democracy. To this day, the League remains one of the most trusted sources of nonpartisan election information for American voters. Please consider joining the League of Women Voters of Livingston County through our website, lwvlivingstonco.org. We are urging all Michigan residents to join us in creating a more perfect state by participating and supporting the participation of others in our democracy. Our next public event for the League will be on Tuesday, March 15th, starting at 7 p.m., where we will be presenting from start to finish the voting process in Livingston County. Our guest speaker is Joe Bridgman, Livingston County Election Coordinator, and we're also pleased to have as our special guests, Chairperson Judy Williams and Co-Vice Chairperson Carla Chapman from the Livingston County Board of Canvassers. You will leave this virtual presentation with a better understanding and appreciation of the election process before, during, and after Election Day in our county. The League of Women Voters of Livingston County, along with other leagues across the state of Michigan, are working hard to educate voters on the safety and security of our elections. Please join us for this educational evening. You can register right now through the Howell Carnegie Library's website. And one more thing, I want to take a quick moment to thank Howell Carnegie Library and tonight's host, Brandy Tambasco, for making this virtual program available to us this evening. We are extremely fortunate to partner with all the public libraries in the Livingston County community. And now I'd like to turn it over to my co-host, Claire Donovan, who will be introducing our special guest for the evening.
Yes, thank you, Ellen, and welcome everybody. We're really excited to have Lindsay Root here this evening to share all of his wonderful knowledge that he has on some of our historical Black citizens from Howell, Michigan. Before we get started though, there's a couple things that I would like to do. First of all, which is to do a land acknowledgement, just to remind everybody that we are aware that this evening's presentation is taking place on Potawatomi, Ojibwa, and Ottawa lands that were never ceded. For that reason, we are grateful, and that knowing that you are here, that tribes are here today, alive and thriving, and that you represent your ancestors today in 2022. Also, before I introduce Lindsay, I would like to, the one question people might be asking is, how does our Black History Evening tie into the League of Women Voters? So when Lindsay is speaking tonight, I want you to keep in mind a timeline that we have for voting rights. So in 1870, Black men were allowed to vote. So at this time in 1870, white men and Black men were the only two groups that were voting at this time. If you wait 50 years, in 1920, white women were given the right to vote, okay? By 1924, we had Native Americans, indigenous people had the right to vote. In 1952 was when the Asian population was given the right to vote. It wasn't until 1965 that Black women were given the right to vote. So you can see that voting rights and voting policy very much ties in and will tie into a lot of the Black history that Lindsay is going to discuss this evening. So with that having been said, Mr. Lindsay Root was born and raised in Howell, Michigan. He went to Central Michigan University, where he got a film and TV degree, moved to California and spent 18 years there doing documentaries and various kind of film work, came back to his hometown to take care of some aging parents, which we all understand that role, Lindsay, and discovered that his grandparents met at the Howell Opera Theater in 1908, which kind of prompted a lot of his research and beginnings at the Howell Opera Theater. So that having been said, Lindsay has a lot to tell us this evening about what he's learned on this historical journey. And I think we would like to start, Lindsay, maybe with, if you can paint a picture for us, mid 1800s, later 1800s, where would you like to start?
Well, hi everyone. My focus is going to be really from the Civil War up to 1900, and if we go back in that period, and hopefully, let's see here. There we go. This is what Howell looked like in about this is about 1900, 1890s actually, and you can see it looks very familiar to contemporary times. A lot of and also, you're all speaking of the Indians earlier. The Grand River is the old, Indian trail, and because of the crown in the hill on Grand River that we're so familiar with at the main four, it creates a lot of familiarity. So if you did time travel back to 1890, you would feel it would be familiar to you. And there are not too many towns that you can say that about. And conversely, someone from that period coming to our contemporary times, they would recognize the city as well, even though they might be aghast at some of the inventions, but just the same. So I always find that when I'm in downtown Howell and I'm walking around, you're always kind of aware of those that come before you. And I think that's a very endearing quality of the town. Now, what promoted, you're wondering, what the heck is this doing up there? This is what prompted a lot of this Black history discussion, is that really what I'm doing now, and I'll be doing later in the month, was going to happen next year. But because University of Michigan decided this year to do the George Jewett Trophy, which is a brand new rivalry trophy between Northwestern and University of Michigan that was awarded this year, and Michigan won, fortunately. Once I knew that, I knew it had to be known that George Jewett had a unique connection to Howell. And I knew that, gosh, we got to get this story out so the University of Michigan knows right off the bat. that there's Howell is part of this story, of this trophy. And thus, that's what prompted this research to come out. It's a little bit, because there's a lot of stuff I'm still researching, but the basic milestones of the story are known. So, but it's just the context and the details that we still have to fill out. Now, this is the one story. Now, we talked earlier, and let me come back out to myself here.
Lindsay, there are a few things that are blocking your
I see
picture. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, when I came back to be a caregiver, and I knew that my grandparents I met at the Opera House, I needed an outlet to, keep your sanity as a caregiver, and thumbs up to all the caregivers out there. And I started doing research on the Howell Opera House because it had never been done before. In fact, I should have queued it up right behind me. I'm at the library, if you can't tell. And where is she? Oh, here we go. These books, can you see that? Yeah. These are must-haves in your library, your personal libraries at home. But in the coverage of the Opera House, that's amazing. I actually turned it right to the right page. What are the chances of that happening? It didn't really do it justice, and how they talked about the history of the Opera House. So that's what kind of provoked me to dive into it. And right off the bat, here we go. This is the first, there we go. This is the first thing caught my eye. And now on the microfilm at the Howell Carnegie Library, in the room I'm in right now, I discovered this advertisement in the county press, or the Livingston Republican. That was the newspaper then. And the Fisk Jubilee singers, at the Opera House, it's like, what is this? I didn't understand it. And then I'm going to play a little video for you that explains what the Fisk Jubilee singers are. And this is a choir from Nashville, from Fisk University, and they would only sing in towns that are sympathetic to the Underground Railroad. And hopefully, yes, here we go.
The Fisk Jubilee singers were the
lyrical voice of Black Reconstruction. They introduced the world to the sacred artistry of their enslaved ancestors. The songs are known as the spirituals.
Lindsay, the video is not appearing on the screen, but we could hear it.
They can hear it?
Launched in 1866 as a school for African Americans.
We can hear it, but not see it.
By 1871, Fisk was facing a serious financial crisis, placing its future in doubt. The school's music teacher and university treasurer organized a student choir, then led them on tour, hoping to raise enough money to save Fisk. It was a bold gambit.
The repertoire of the Fisk Jubilee singers struck a chord with the audiences.
Most white concert patrons had only seen Black people on stage in minstrel shows. The spirituals were the country's first real introduction to African American music and Black religious traditions.
These are songs of overcoming. They were about healing. They were about love. They were about the Black struggle.
They allowed someone else to understand what it means to be in your world or in your shoes.
The Fisk Jubilee singers brought a sense of dignity, purpose, and beauty, shared that tradition, and served as a reminder of the deep humanity of Black people.
The profits generated by the group's performances, Fisk was able to buy the land on which it sits today. Fisk is one of the many historically Black colleges and universities established during Reconstruction that still thrive. Fisk Jubilee singers have received the National Medal of the Arts and have been inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame. To this day, the school continues to celebrate the departure of the choir's first tour.
Now, if I get out of this,
Jubilee singers were the lyrical voice of
that. Hi. So were you able to hear that, folks? So I was completely blown away when I saw that, because I never associated Black groups like that with Howell. And to know that they were at the Opera House and they would only sing in towns that were sympathetic to the Underground Railroad and to the abolitionist movement. And then I further read down, let's see if I get this up now. Boom, hopefully this works. On my next line, Technology, don't you love it? Stand by. There we go. So this is, I know you can't read this per se, but I'm going to read it to you. This is from the Livingston Republican. 3 things were accomplished by getting the Fisk Jubilee singers to come to Howell. They gave the people a most wholesome and enjoyable musical feast. They did so much credit. They would always be welcome in Howell. And they left $60. You can barely read that, but they left $60 for the Presbyterian Church to go to their library. Now, this is 1881. $60 is the equivalent of $1,600 in today's value. And I estimate that they would have had 1,000 people at that concert. So their gross was probably $6,500, of which 1,600 went to the Presbyterian Church. And they were the sponsors of them coming to Howell. So, and as you saw in the video beforehand, the whole point of the Fisk Jubilee singers doing their concerts was to raise money to save their college and to buy the land. So I just find it remarkable. And I'm sure the Howell Presbyterian Church has no idea that they received such a large sum of money back in 1881. Now, this is a guy that we all know, Dwayne Zemper, who's out in front of the library, the statue. He was the one that really got me, oh, are we playing? Hold on, stand by. Of course. Well, anyway, Zemp was the one that she's really being temperamental here. Here we go. Here we go. Any day now. Oh, well, anyway, Zemp was instrumental in saying that you've got to look into some of this Black history. And in the video, I was going to show you at the Opera House how we were able to uncover a lot of playbills and stuff under the bleachers. And this is the one playbill. You can't quite see it in here. Shoot. Let's see. Can I go full page on that?
Could you start your slideshow, Lindsay?
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like there's still one pop-up on your screen that may be blocking the top of the slideshow. If you could somehow turn that off or move it.
I
Thank
don't
you.
see that. See, this is playing now. I'm checking this video earlier, see if it plays now
Okay,
in the
thank
full
you.
screen mode. Oh, and it was working a moment ago. Huh. Anyway, I'm going to come back out. The sources for my research, I was going to talk about that over the video. A lot of the stuff that Zemp promoted me to dive into, most of it is from newspaper clippings, stuff from the Howell archives, also from the Brighton room at the Brighton Library. It's been a big help. Also, postcards have been a big help to me. What's written on the back, and especially those that are up in the Petoskey area, which I'll explain a little bit later. And then also various other archives across the country. And one of the things with the pandemic, a lot of these archives are just not open, and now they're just getting reopened again. So that's one thing I'm really excited about. Let me see what we can do. I'm going to move ahead here. It's kind of a bummer that video didn't play, but that's technology, right? Yeah, there we go. This is that. Okay. So this is George Jewett. We're getting back to George. And this is George when he was with the University of Michigan football team. This is the 1891 season. That's a close-up of George. He was a handsome guy. He was known as the Renaissance man because he could speak 4 languages. He was a doctor. And plus he was a very good-looking guy. And this is what he looked like when he came to Howell. Now, what's the big mystery is that if you're you got your degree from Northwestern, you're a doctor, you speak languages, and you got everything going for you. It didn't make any sense that your first stop is to come to Howell to coach the very first football team in 1895. And this is the very first Howell team. And that is George Jewett in the back and profile. And here's a close-up of him more so. And then the guy who's in the front row there, you see with his head down, that is Lyman Norris, who was the assistant coach and also would jump in and play with the team. So it's a rather, it's a pretty cool shot. And you notice on the goalpost, there's a horseshoe in the middle. And this photo is taken let's see, will this video play? No. Wow. But anyway, it is in the parking lot, the property where that photo was at. It was at the parking lot of the St. Joe's parking lot is where that field was.
Lindsay, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
Did George Jewett, did he have any history at U of M or Northwestern? Was he
Yes,
the first Black football player?
Thank you. He was the very first Black football player in the Big Ten as we know it today. And he was a valedictorian at Ann Arbor Central High School, or Ann Arbor Pioneer as we know it today, and went to University of Michigan for 2 years. He had a argument with the, or I shouldn't say argument, he had a falling out with the medical department in Michigan because he thought that they should have a higher standard. And he transferred to Northwestern for his medical degree and continued playing football there. And that's the background on him. I think that kind of answers your question.
Thank you.
And but he didn't really have a connection to Howell per se, other than he would have known that Howell had a very harmonious Black population. There are people here he would have known, and it gives evidence to how there was a thriving Black population in Howell. I don't know, it was in the video that I unfortunately couldn't play here in a moment ago, but let me, let's see if I go here. I get out, can I get off of this? I just want to get off of this. There we go. It is this man here, Abraham Losford, who came to Howell in 1850. And it's because of him. He is the first African-American citizen of Howell. And he was a barber. And he's also a runaway slave. He was a fugitive slave. So he was highly desired by the bounty hunters. In Livingston County, what people don't realize was a very pro-abolitionist county. The prosecuting attorney was not going to prosecute or was not going to allow bounty hunters into the county. Some counties were not as favorable in that situation, but Livingston County was very pro-abolitionist. So it was a safe spot for him to settle. He actually was in Canada and was going to go to Lansing to set up, he was a barber, and he was going to set up a barbershop in Lansing. And he took the, see if I got it come up here, the plank road from Detroit to Howell. And then you would take another stagecoach to Lansing. But when he got off the stagecoach in Howell to transfer, Mr. Wilbur, I forget his name, Wilbur, anyway, he was convinced to stay and to set up his barbershop in Howell instead. And this is more on the Detroit Howell Plank Road. And that Plank Road was very instrumental in him coming out here. Obviously, he wouldn't have come. And then what's really crazy is this is a comic book or a kid's book by Sean and Sonia Hollins and the illustrations by KJ on Benjamin Losford. That is Abraham Losford's son, who's also a barber. And this book is all homage to Black barbers. And it really is devoted to Abraham Losford. And Sonia and Claire will clarify, this is going to do a reading of this book tomorrow. So I don't want to dive too much into it because I don't want to steal her thunder. But this is the book, The Handy Dandy Clippers of Benjamin Losford, which is really about Abraham Losford, his dad. Now, this is in the opening of the book, that would be Abraham Losford on the left, and that is Benjamin Losford, his son, on the right, right when Benjamin is learning how to be a barber. And that window, the view out that window, it theoretically would be Howell. And it's just crazy how this is all documented in this book. And there's some more artwork of Benjamin on the left and Abraham on the right. It's really cute. And the book really does grow on you once you got it. And it's so nice in the back of the book, you can see they devoted a lot of history as well to the timeline of the Losfords. And it explains their how Abraham came to Howell and so on and so forth. And then also, this is a little, I know you can't read it, I'm going to read it for you, but this is an example of how well loved Abraham Losford was. That here is, this is an article about Devil's Night, the night before Halloween. And Abraham Losford, he died in 1897. This is about 1893. He's very, very ill. And the Howell KT band, there was a marching band, and about, I think it's 60 kids and adults joined together and brought a bounty of gifts and a purse of money for Abraham Losford on Devil's Night, because they had so much admiration for the guy, and Abraham was very appreciative. But this is just a small indicator of how well loved Abraham Losford was. And these are some of his advertisements in the front page or in the paper over the years. And he was a barber in Howell from 1855 up until his death in 1897. So, wait, did I say that 1855? Yeah, he had a 40-year run, and these are various advertisements he had for his barbershop, Shampoo Saloon, and he also did women too. And he had numerous locations in downtown Howell that he had set up shop. This one I really like, Abe and Lincoln. He had, this is kind of a motif. This is from 1865. This is probably one of his first ads that he had for his saloon. And then this is from his obit in 1897. I'll just read the very end of it. The death of Mr. Losford removes one of the last links that binds the past to the present. He was a distinct and conspicuous character in the community. His presence, as well as his open and manly character, was a living reminder of the sin of slavery. Many winters will come and go before the name of old Uncle Abe is forgotten in the community. And here it is, what? It's 1897, that's 125 years ago, and we're still talking about him. So that is awesome. And then this is an awesome thing. This is just really getting started. This is a website for the Kentucky Borderlands from Northern Kentucky University does this. And I highly recommended people, they've just been recently updating it because they're taking some of the information I've posted up here and they're putting it on this site. It's very interactive, and you can find out, you can read about his former escape attempts, and it documents how he was caught and recaptured and so on and so forth. And because he had multiple escapes from Kentucky, he was highly sought after by bounty hunters because they would have gotten more. And then he belonged, his last slaveholder was a guy named Cave Johnson. And then you can click on Cave Johnson's page and learn all about him. So it's a really great website. If you just remember African Americans of the Kentucky Borderlands, you'll get there. And they've really expanded it in just the last few months. So if I get out of this, let's see here, if I get back.
Lindsay, if I'm correct, did he go back for some of his family?
He did,
When
thank you. He made at least 2 trips after he'd already established his barbershop in Howell, back to Kentucky, you know, because he's on a barber in Howell before the Civil War has even started. So he did 2 really risky trips back to Kentucky to bring family and friends forward. And what is, hopefully it'll come up next. Oh, good.
And do we know, were they forced to, like, did they live in the country? Were they living in the city? Was there a separate Black community or?
No, no, they were integrated all through town. And the heavy concentration, hopefully it'll be the next slide if I'm lucky. Oh my gosh, I am lucky. Look at this. I'll show you, Claire. Thank you for the question. That red arrow is pointing towards West Street. And then just to the left of that arrow, you see it looks like a little pond. That is the swamp by the depot. This map shows a time when there was no railroad through that area. And so when the railroad went through, it cut off Chestnut Street, which is just to the east of West Street. Let's see if I'll advance this one more. This is how it is today, showing the railroad cutting through West Street, and it also shows how Chestnut Street is cut off. And if I was going to do some archaeological digging, I think it's, by the way, it's through this West Street and Chestnut Street corridor, as I call it, is where there was a heavy concentration of Black families. I want to say there was almost as 40 to 50 African Americans that lived in this general area. But when the railroad went through, Chestnut Street got cut off. So I think if you're using ground penetrating sonar or whatever they use nowadays, if you go directly opposite of Chestnut Street into the woods, into the swamp, you should find some kind of reference to former structures. Because if you know, when you go up West Street, you go over the railroad tracks, it makes a funny jog to the right. And that's all because of how it was augmented once the railroad went through. But it's in that general area where most of them lived. Abraham Losford lived on Railroad Street. And then also where you see the green arrow, that is pointed to A. Childers. This is another prominent family that Abraham Losford brought forward from Kentucky. And it's a big one for the history of Howell. And that's where Mrs. Childers' house was and still is on West Street. And directly across the street, and you can see there's on the map, it says Michigan Condensed Milk Company across the street from that green arrow. That's what was across the street. That is the milk factory. And just so for your information, this is one topic I would love to do another discussion about, just on the Borden Milk Factory that used to be on West Street, because it has quite a history of how the business operated. And the next slide is, this is an article written about Eliza Childers. And again, I don't expect you to read it, but this is done by Bev Farrell in 1975-74. It's the best article written about Mrs. Childers and the plight and the hard work that the family went through. She had 16 children, 16. And so of those 16 children, roughly 9 or 10 came to Howell. And of those, about 5 of them were fully invested in going through all of, K through 12, so to speak, at Howell schools. What is fascinating, let's see, let me move ahead. This was the high school that they would have attended. That school is where the current post office is. And just so for other people, more of a reference, that's where Michigan Avenue School, that a lot of people that might be viewing this also, did go to school, and that was torn down in 1981 for the post office. But this is the 1885 class, and on the left there is Nancy Childers. She was valedictorian and the very first African-American valedictorian for Howell High School. This is the class of 1890. And on the left corner up there is Lulu Childers. And this is the class of 1890. And here is the pupils, and they're the people that are in that class of 1890. And those are the ages those students were when they graduated. And look how old they are. There's Edwin Thorne is 24 when he graduates. That is crazy. And I think Edwin has got to be the guy in the middle, probably sitting down. He looks about 24. But Lulu is 20. And you're an adult at 20. And so let me back up. She goes to Oberlin University, and as a freshman, she is instantly a student leader at Oberlin, and she's going there for the music department. She is a singer. She sang at the Howell Opera House. She sang at the Methodist Church, which is where the parking lot was, in the parking lot behind the Opera House. So the Methodist Church and the Opera House are right together. And those are two places that were very influential in her career. And so she goes to Oberlin, graduates in 1895. She then goes to Knoxville College and teaches there for a while. And then she's in Uricksville, Virginia, teaching for 1 year. But ultimately, she ends up at Howard University in 1905. And she taught there till 1943. She's a huge figure in terms of the foundation of Howard University. This is a building named after her, Lulu Vera Childers Hall. It is, and here's a close-up of her nameplate. And for those of you who are not familiar with Howard, it is probably the most prestigious historic Black college in the country. And Lulu's building, and here's, well, let me just back up. It is situated in such a way that there's they call it the yard, the diag, as it would be University of Michigan, a big rectangular plot of land. Administration's at one end, and then Lulu Childers Hall is at the other end. So it's kind of like she's opposing the administration. And the plaza that's in front of Lulu Childers Hall is where all the, like I say, all the cool kids at Howard hang out at. It is a real power point, so to speak, in the campus. And this is some artwork that's in the basement of Lulu Childers Hall. This is the fine arts building. So all your music, all your theater, marching band, solos, all that happens in there. And then this is Lulu Childers as she's depicted in that larger mural. She is hugely instrumental in that program. And this is a quote from Ryan Swain after his freshman visit. He incidentally felt at home and experienced a spiritual vibration in Lulu Viry Childers Hall, the building where professors help sharpen the skills of sisters and of actresses of Felicia Rashad and Deborah Allen, the dynamic singing duo of Donny Hathaway, Roberta Flack, author Toni Morrison, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, Black Panthers star Chadwick Boseman, and just about every important Black disruptor. And he associates that with Childers Hall, which is just amazing because no one, I think, in Howell is aware of how significant that building is to that campus. And this is when Lulu was teaching the choirs at Howard. This is their vested choir. They were a big hit in Washington. They would have completely integrated audiences would come in on campus to watch the choirs perform. Her choirs were famous because it was the first time that a Black choir sung traditional classic choral music. Before that, Black choirs, just like the Fisk Jubilee singers, would only sing Negro spirituals. In this case, she had her choirs doing classical, traditional choral music. No Black choir had done that before because they thought they weren't capable of it. And yet they were very capable. And this, she pushed the boundaries even more. She had her students do Shakespeare. So you can see by this photo, she was up there. This is about 1909. And I love the woman on the lower right. She could be today, completely contemporary in terms of her look. And then
Lindsay, would she have known the Losfords and some of the other people, or were they all in the same time frame? Or
yeah, she would have been her oldest brother, Dave Anderson, by a different father, married Mary Losford. So her oldest brother married a Losford, and then that's why they were brought forward to Howell from Kentucky. She left Kentucky. Lulu was born in 1870. She came to Howell as a baby in 1872. And there were 9 or 10 that came at that time as one family.
Gotcha.
So that is quick. But again, all those people on West Street, they're all interconnected. They're all connected directly or indirectly to Abraham Losford. That one guy brought all these people forward. And then Lulu had established the spring concert at Howard, and she had stepped her game up every year. So by the time they were in the 30s, she wanted to bring Marian Anderson to Howard for the spring concert. And Marian Anderson was pretty famous in Europe. And because Marian Anderson is a Black opera singer, she couldn't find a venue outside of the Howard campus that was going to be big enough because Washington, D.C. had rules against, you had to be segregated. Lulu had a fit and said that if she has to sing if it's in a tent, the concert's going to happen. And this got picked up in the papers, as you see here, because this back and forth of because people knew the concert was announced, they just didn't know where it was going to happen. And so the public across the country was aware of this, and Lulu just had a fit and said, it's going to happen if we have to put up a tent. And because of that, Eleanor Roosevelt got involved, and they ended up having the concert at the Lincoln Memorial. And this doesn't.
Nation's most impressive Easter demonstration.
Audio's low on it.
75,000 massed before Lincoln Memorial to hear Marian Anderson, colored contralto, make her capital debut at the Great Emancipator Shrine.
And if you look really closely, you will see Lulu in the background.
And a countrywide controversy, with this great gathering as the climax. The singer was invited by Secretary of the Interior, Ickes, who attends with Secretary of the Treasury, Morgenthau. Spectators include Supreme Court Justice Black, New York Senator Robert Wagner, and a host of notables.
Picking her out. There,
here to listen to the voice acclaimed by many as the finest in a century. That was a really huge event. And now, Felicia Rashad is now the Dean of the Fine Arts. She is now holds the position that Lulu Childers had. But I want to pop this out. Wait a minute here, right here. So the new $5 bill, here's the $5. We all know this $5 bill, right? On the back, you see the Lincoln Memorial. The new $5 bill is going to have the Marian Anderson concert imposed without all that crowd in there. And Lulu, theoretically, very small, sitting at the top. But think about it. This is a moment that's going to be on our U.S. currency that was only responsible because a woman, a Black woman from Howell, said no. She's kind of like a Rosa Parks in this situation, because she had such a fit. We're going to set up a tent for the concert. So that defiance and that, you know, laying the law down, so to speak, attitude was from Lulu, and it stuck. And now it's going to be on our U.S. currency. It's amazing. So let me continue on here while I still got a little bit of time. We're almost done here with this, but Lulu is really huge. I cannot emphasize that enough. And if you go to a Howard University, it's really awesome because she's a true Highlander, a true Howellite.
So can I put our plug in right now for that, Lindsay?
Yeah.
What are you doing in a week and a half?
So I'll be doing a presentation. I'm kind of holding back on a lot of Lulu stuff because I'll be devoting a lot to her life on the 25th at the Opera House for the Diversity Council luncheon. So I highly recommend that people come out there, because I could do a ton on her alone, because she was so huge and so many cool little things that she did along the way that were really breakthroughs. What I have on the screen now is the last time she sang in Howell. She would have been, this is 1923. She sang at William Harding's memorial service at the Presbyterian Church. And she would have been 1923, you're born in 70, so she would have been 53 when she sang there. And that was the last time she sang in Howell. But mind you, she always had the house on West Street, 421 West Street. Her routine she would every year forever, it makes it easy to research it because you know where she is at any given month or week. She would always summer in Howell, and then she would be going back to school mid-September, back to Howard, and then she would come home for the holidays, and then she would break, Howard would break the end of June. And then Lulu would always go and do a workshop, a camp, or a pageant, something, and a lot of times it would be civil rights related. So for the first 3 weeks after school, she would be doing that, and then she would be in Howell for the rest of the summer, come mid-July, third week in July. And then if she was lucky enough, she would steal away and go up to Petoskey for a week, up to Bayview, where she would take in classes and also teach up there. And then we'll go back to William Harding.
Lindsay, it's 7:51, so I wanted to make sure that we left a little bit of time for any questions or.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to mention where they're buried? Oh, there we go.
There's her grave at Lakeview Cemetery. It is a beautiful spot. The two stones that are next to that tree, that's her sister. And here it is in the winter time, and you can tell she's right next to the veterans. That American flag determines, it's the designation for the veterans area. It's really cool because it's kind of like she's overlooking the veterans, and it's an incredibly honorable spot. And it almost strikes me as if the city fathers knew a long time ago that they need to put her in a very honorable spot because people will be visiting her later. And yeah, and I think, yeah. And then my one last thing is Dave Anderson, who would have been her oldest brother. He was also a pitcher and a player manager for the Howell City baseball team, not the high school team, but the city team. And in 1878, thank you. He wanted to demonstrate something, and hopefully you better play. Oh, I know. I forgot. I have to go down here, don't I? Oh. Here we go. There's no sound on this. So anyway, so Dave has his baseball and he comes over here to the alley.
Lindsay, I'm sorry. You'll have to share your screen.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Do you see it now?
Not yet.
Star. All right. Stand by. Stand by. Where's my share screen button? Do you see it yet?
Not yet. Are you in your Zoom window?
Stand by. I'm in the meeting. Yes, I am.
Okay, the share screen, the green
I don't see
option
the
down at
button.
the
The
bottom.
button's not coming up. I don't see it. Huh.
One moment.
Stand by. Come on. Come on. I don't have a share screen button.
Lindsay, while you're looking, are the Losfords buried in Howell too?
Yes. No. She's coming in. Yeah, it's Abraham Losford is very near it's so exciting. No, I want okay, here we go. There we go. Oh my gosh. So this is Dave. It's such a buildup for this. Here we are. Now we see this, and we're at the main four corners. So Dave Anderson, who's a baseball pitcher, player manager for the Howell City team, he says, hey, I can throw a curveball. At this point, no one in America had ever thrown a curveball. So he comes into the alley here, and he's going to go to a guy named Howard Hovey, who owns a store called Winans and Hovey, which was right there. Howard comes out, he talks to Dave Anderson. Dave Anderson stands right there. And Dave takes his baseball and says, you go down there, Howard, you're going to catch the ball. I'm going to bend it around the corner. So here comes the ball. Howard is in the alley. The ball is traveling. It's a really slow pitch, I know. And the ball is going to curve around the alley into Howard's hands. And Howard catches the ball right there. And as you can tell, from that position, Howard Hovey could not see Dave Anderson. It's a bit of a mystery. Howard was so impressed, he wrote an article about it in 1936, explaining how this black, and Dave Anderson was a black barber as well, demonstrated the earliest version of a curveball. And it's kind of a cute story. And here we go. And I knew about this story, but I never knew that Dave Anderson was black. And so, because his name doesn't really prompt you to, it's a very plain name almost. And then realizing it was Lulu Childers' oldest brother. But so we have some baseball history in that alley. So that kind of concludes what I was going to speak about. Is there some questions or things like that?
There have been a few questions. Leo had asked
Hi, Leo.
before if you would be talking about how things had changed in Howell and all of the North as the 20th century progressed. I believe you touched on that. He also wanted to know, do you know when the Childers family left the Howell area?
They left, mind you, she Eliza Childers, she had 16 kids. She only had one grandchild out of 16. One. So they're not replenishing themselves, the Childers family. And Eliza dies in 1922. She's 98. Most of her family's already died off by then. Lulu dies in the 40s, and she has only 2 other sisters alive. So the Childers family, they finally leave and they sell their house to the Rogers family, who currently live there now, in 1960. So it depends on how you, and that was the Todd family. They were related to Childers, but that is, and that is the result of that one grandchild was a Todd. But really the Childers family probably died off when Eliza died in 1922. And in 1921 is when the Klan came to Michigan and would have been in Livingston County. I think it's more of they're not really related, but it just so happens Eliza dies right when they kind of make their appearance. And also I think the industrialization of Detroit is what that a lot of those early blacks that were in Howell, they gravitated towards Detroit after 1900. And but again, a lot of those early pioneers, those first arrivals that were quite a few of them, they just ended up fading away and dying off. They didn't replenish. And there's a whole issue about former slaves and children of slaves not having kids. There's a whole topic there. And I'm sure there's many reasons why, but it certainly was very apparent in the Howell situation.
Thank you. And then Deborah had asked, do you have any information about Huey Long? She thinks that's what his name was. He worked for her grandfather, Al King, in his barbershop, probably in the 40s and 50s. I believe that's a little later than what you've been discussing.
Yeah, and I know Mr. King, I'm aware of him, but I'm not familiar with that name, Long.
Okay.
And I also want to emphasize and that comic book touches on it. Howell had multiple barbershops. They went from none to many, and they were all operated by African Americans. And they were really good. They weren't just casual cutters. They won hair cutting competitions. So they were at the top of their game. And then from that cluster of early black barbers in Howell, Benjamin Losford goes to Edmore, Michigan, which is covered in that comic book. And then Charles Straws, who was the other member of the Black Barbers, he sets up shop in Fowlerville, and he ends up being really over the top, not over the top. He's a very big character, much like Abraham Losford is at the Howell. Charles Straws, Straws, he is to Fowlerville. So, all of that came from the energy that was coming from downtown Howell, starting back in 1855. Charles Straws, he left Howell and set up shop in Fowlerville, I think in 1877. And the same time that Benjamin Losford, Abraham's son, left about that same time to set up shop in Edmore. And
Lindsay, does Edmore do they celebrate Benjamin Losford, or do they have a museum for him?
They have a museum. They devote a whole section to him, and I've been waiting to get in there, check it out. They really celebrate Benjamin. But the funny thing is that the whole story is really emanates and starts in Howell. And
we have a couple of questions about the barbershop and Abraham. The day is asked where the barbershop was located in Howell, I believe, for Abraham's.
yeah, he danced all over downtown Howell. He was in second story second story downtown buildings. He was kind of all over. I think I documented 6 different locations. And I can't explain why he was moving so much. Now, what's always fascinating to me is, he was spotted on the stagecoach, trying to get to Lansing, and he had a legitimate barber chair on the strap to the top of the stagecoach. So just that image alone, if you're going to have an opening title sequence to a movie, you almost have to have that, because it's so striking. And that's what got everyone's attention when he came into Howell. You don't see a barber chair strapped to a stagecoach too often. And those stagecoaches would carry up to 20 people, and they would average about 10 miles an hour. So they could make, kind of decent time.
We are a little over time. Do you mind, if anybody does not want to stick around, go right ahead. This recording will be up on YouTube. Lindsay, are you okay with staying to answer the few questions that still remain that people have asked? Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Is Abraham Losford buried in Howell? Michael wants to know.
He sure is. He is. I thought I had a photo of him in there, and I don't. He is. If you know where the sexton's office is at the Lakeview Cemetery, he's just straight ahead on the right of that road. We'll have to put a mark or something to distinguish it. And his stone needs some work. But no, he has a family plot there, and then kind of kitty corner across the street from him is where Eliza Childers and her last husband, Alex Childers, is buried. And then down by the water, I showed you the pictures of where Lulu is buried. So they're all roughly within the same area of the cemetery.
Great. Speaking of plaques, Valerie had said that we need a plaque in the alley talking about the historical curveball. So that would be great if anybody really gets behind that. Diane had asked, what year did the Jubilee Singers perform here?
They performed 3 times, starting in 1881, 83, and 85 was the last time that they played in Howell. And again, they're only going to play in towns that are sympathetic to their cause. And it's just astounding that they would have taken in that much money. And, locals couldn't get enough of the Jubilee Singers. And then Howell, we had our own Howell Jubilee Singers. They had 4 black gentlemen that sang in it. I don't know who they were. But they did show up, and they played at various engagements. So there's all kinds of, what I didn't really touch on earlier, because that video didn't play, is that
when I found all these anecdotal pieces of evidence through the Opera House that, wow, there's a Black population in Howell. And then I just said, wait, all right, there's too much going on here for there not to be something bigger than what I think it is. And if I don't know if I said that right, but anyway, that's what prompted all of my research. And I was just astounded right out the back to learn that Fisk Jubilee story of taking in that much money. That really got my attention, because they're not going to do that not unless there's something going on in the community with some kind of thriving Black community, in your town. And there were plenty of other Black performers at the Opera House, and people would go, and Black people would go as patrons. They would get quoted in the paper, and the Howell papers were really good. They would never distinguish anyone as being, Black or white. They were just, they saw no color. Whereas I can look at other local newspapers and they will make the distinction that someone is a Negro or they're colored or whatever. And the Howell papers didn't. And like, for example, when anything big happened in Howell, I go through the Livingston Republican, the Livingston Democrat, and then I check all the Owasso papers, which there were 3 of. Howell and Owasso were very, very competitive with each other for commerce. And nowadays, I don't think, we don't think of Owasso so much in those terms. But if you ever want to have a good reset and want to take a little day trip, I highly recommend just taking any of the backcountry roads from Howell. Just drive north. Eventually, you'll get to Owasso, and it's one of my favorite summertime trips because it's all dirt roads, and it could be 1890 instantly. You drive through Bancroft, and it's an interesting ride. But it's really weird when you think how competitive those Howell and Owasso were, because they were competing for a railroad business. Where would the shops be for the new railroad that was coming into town? And that would be 1877 for the Pier Marquette. That is the east-west line that goes through town. And then the north-south line, which I call the Ann Arbor, was 1888. And those were huge impact on the city of Howell.
Great. I did have somebody mention, if you, speaking of the videos that didn't play, if you'd be able to share the videos that didn't work when the recording was shared.
Yeah, and I'll maybe on the video, the recording, I can reinsert them.
I don't know that we'll be able to do that necessarily. Perhaps you can educate me on how to do that.
If you can give me the file, I can fix it.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. It may be a little delayed. We tried to do a quick turnaround of like a day or two, so it may be a little bit, but we'll see if we can't get that done. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
We can post it, and then the amended version can go up.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you for asking, Valerie. That's great. I am very sorry. Elsa asked if George Jewett was the first football coach of Howell. I believe he's the first one for Howell High School.
He is the very first football coach for Howell. And again, he was the very first Black football player in the Big Ten. And it's just really cool that Northwestern Michigan, because he went to both schools, are playing, for the that traveling trophy. And again, that's what kind of prompted, if it weren't for that trophy being awarded this year, I probably wouldn't be sitting here doing this presentation. It'd be next year I'd be doing it. But we know the basic milestones of the stories. Like I said earlier, it's just the details and the context are what need to be filled in.
Rich had asked what got you interested in Howell's history. I'm pretty sure Claire had mentioned that during your intro about hearing about was it your grandparents meeting at the Howell Opera House? Yeah,
my grandparents met at the Opera House in 1908. And knowing that I had to fulfill my time, as a caregiver and to keep my sanity, I thought, and realizing that the Howell Bicentennial book didn't really, other than being awesome in every other category except for the Opera House,
I thought, you know what? No one's done a good research on it. I'm gonna dive in. And it's and Claire and I have talked about this before. It can be pretty spiritual experience, especially in 1976 when the bicentennial book was written. They didn't have the internet. It's much easier to research the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s now than it was in 1976, because you have newspapers.com in particular. Because before, I'm gonna pan this. That machine over there was where I would sit and unscrew the microfilm, and you'd have to actually read the freaking newspaper. And now on newspaper.com, I just type in Losford for the Howell paper, and blammo, I've got 20 articles in Losford. That would have taken me a year.
And perhaps as
Sitting
Michael,
over there for
yeah.
a year, I can do in 20 minutes now. And that's
You're-
only in the last 7 years, 8 years that utility has really gotten really good. So you're going to wonder why isn't this Howell history come out before on this Black community? Well, it would have been too hard to research prior. And then you also got Northern Kentucky University is really stepping up their game, and they're supplying with information about those that left, the Great Migration from the borderlands in Kentucky. And we can combine it with our information here. And so it makes it really exciting.
Well, anybody is welcome to come and check the microfilm out and scroll through it if they
Yeah,
have the
you do.
time and
Now-
energy. You can also come and use our computers to search newspapers.com.
No, what you still have here, the Follow Rule Review, which is an awesome paper that goes back then, is not online yet. In the Brighton Argus is not online yet either. And both of those newspapers are excellent resources to research stuff in Howell, because all your county papers were very competitive with each other. So they would get a little bit, I don't want to say not backstabbing, but you kind of get the dirt from the other newspaper, what's really going on in Howell, or what from their point of view, from Fowlerville or Brighton's point of view. I find that the Pinckney Dispatch, which you can get online through the Ann Arbor Library, I've gotten a lot of coloration on stories through the Pinckney paper, just because they're all competitive with each other. They're all fighting for commerce. So if you can knock your neighboring town down a little bit and say your town's better, they kind of did that back then. They were
People don't change.
heavy into boosterism. You have to be careful too, because they were overly boastful as to how awesome their town or village was.
Well, thank you for the insight into the history of our city and into the wonderful interactions of the papers, Lindsay. One thing Michael did want to say is you'd probably be able to search newspapers.com, find that your grandpa got his hair cut by Losford. Wouldn't that be great?
It would be.
So, Claire, did you want to say anything then?
Well, the League of Women Voters would really like to thank Lindsay for this presentation this evening. And I think everybody's enjoyed it. It's part of our whole coming together as a community for Black History Month. If you enjoy this kind of presentation and you enjoy this kind of history, join in with us tomorrow. The writer of Benjamin Losford's Handy Dandy Scissors is going to be featured with the Diversity Council at noon. Go to our website and you'll meet
Sonia.
the author. Yep, Sonia. And then a week from this Friday, Lindsay will be doing a presentation solely on Lulu Childers, because there is so much to be heard about her at the Opera House. Join us. You can buy your tickets at Eventbrite. And again, the site is at the LivingstonDiversityCouncil.com, which I believe is in our chat. And join us for a good Southern lunch.
And then
So
we also
thank
have, and Claire, you don't know this yet, August 2nd is another date in the future at the Opera House, which is Emancipation Day, which is June 19th is what the country is going to celebrate this year. But in Howell, they actually celebrated August 2nd. So this year, August 2nd is a day that I've got on hold at the Opera House, that we can also do a continuation of talk about some of these Black stories of Howell, for sure.
Great. Thank you. Ellen.
Yeah, Lindsay, I just wanted to say we're so grateful to have you in our community and
Yep.
to be doing the hard work you've done in order to bring this presentation and this information to us, just not to us, but wherever you go. We truly appreciate it. And I look forward to hearing you later on this month. And hopefully I'll catch that tomorrow. And if you could, Brandy, include all those links in that follow-up email, I think you said you were, that would be, we'd be so grateful for that. And thank you everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you,
Thank
Ellen.
you.
Thank you, Claire. I will definitely include all the links, including the Kentucky Borderlands and the links to all the events for everyone. Lindsay, there's been so much thanks and gratitude coming through the chat for you, your research, for the league getting this program together. Thank you for sharing the history of our town with all of us and reminding us what's here. Really appreciate that. Thanks again to our partner, the League of Women Voters of Livingston County, for making this evening possible. Visit their website, www.lwvlivingstonco.org, to learn more about the organization and how you can become involved. Thank you all for attending tonight's program and sticking with us this far. We hope you enjoyed it. I know many of you are telling us that the chat is going through, that you have. Thank you. If you have a few minutes, please let us know on our event evaluation that I linked earlier in the chat what you thought, so we can bring more programs like this to you in the future. Everyone who registered today will soon receive an email including those links to additional resources and the links to our YouTube channels. Visit our website, www.howelllibrary.org, to discover more upcoming events from the Howell Carnegie District Library. And good night. Thank you, everyone.